Like most horse show or rodeo events, it got its start on the working wrench, when the cowboys had to catch and treat a large steer on the open range. It's called dally team roping, or heading and heeling for short. To be successful at it requires perfect coordination between both the header and the heeler, and both their horses. Timing is critical, and has become one of the most popular of all roping events. Like any other athletic event, it takes an understanding of the fundamentals and lots of practice to win that first championship. John Miller, former PRCA World Champion team roper, has also shown 8 champions at the AQHA World Championships, and he has some outstanding tips on becoming a better team roper.
Hi, today we're going to discuss the basics and fundamentals of the fastest growing sport in the United States and Canada, team roping. In order to be successful as a header, we not only have to catch the steer by the horns, but also handle the steer for the heeler to make a successful catch. What I try to do in all my schools is teach everybody how to practice. My basic target spot is the base of the left horn on the steer. Right here, this is what I never take my eyes off. I position myself about a foot to the left of the steer's hip, left hip, and about a foot or two daylight between myself and the steer. I try to get my loop as square, as flat as I can over my head, my arm elbow high, my tip down a little bit towards the steer's head. I'll throw a couple of loops and show you exactly what I mean. Now, all I've done is got a nice, smooth, easy swing, kept my loop over my head, and followed through right straight down to the base of the steer's left horn. I try to not use the term throw because that's not what my loop is. My loop is more of a roll release. Anytime a person has to throw that rope, you're not going to be able to get your slack back quick enough, get to the saddle horn properly, and if you delay that slack one more stride, you've gone another stride down the arena. So I try to get the slack back as it goes over the steer's head in the same motion as my release. Okay? Using the base of the left horn, reach, follow through, slack. Now, as far as handling that steer, the reason I position myself on the left hip of the steer, after I've roped, got my slack, go to the horn, I keep my horse straight. As the slack comes out of the head rope, the steer's head will come around. At that point, you determine which direction and how fast that steer is going to handle. What I try to do or keep in my mind is that I don't turn the steer and drag him. I turn the steer and guide him, letting his own momentum dictate his speed. If the steer is going too slow, I'll pick him up a little bit. If he's going too fast, I'll try to keep him out on the end of the rope, playing him like I would a big fish. Hopefully the heeler is there and got a pitch already. Okay, here's the move. Right there, steer's head comes to the left, then you determine the direction and the speed. One of the main misconceptions people have as far as roping horns is concerned is that you're supposed to rope the right horn, roll it over the left horn. That causes many problems. What happens when you're out of time or not in stride with your horse is if you're trying to rope the right horn, you'll not clear the tip of the left horn, creating either a half head or a miss. I'll throw a couple of loops like most people have problems with. All right, there's another problem that I just created for myself. My slack didn't come back right and I couldn't get it quick enough. So the loop has to come over the top, straight down, not across. What happens when you come across, a lot of times that loop will come back and hit the steer on the side, bounce off. The three legal catches that we use in the team roping are around the horns, which is this loop here, half head, which is one horn and a half head, and around the neck, which is both horns and the neck. Those are the three legal catches in the team roping. Some things to remember when you're practicing. If you're starting to have trouble roping the right horn or a half head, a couple of things to do. Move your horse to the left a little farther, raise your arm a little farther, lengthen the spoke in your loop. Lengthening the spoke in your loop will make the loop flatten out and make it quit cutting under the left horn. Make sure you have a big, smooth, easy, wide open swing. If you're a person that has to swing your rope over here on the right side, make sure you have plenty of spoke in your loop, following through to the left base of the left horn to an extreme. During the heading run, I make sure my position is good, my swing is right, reaching rope, turn the steer back. All the time, I never take my eyes off that steer. I can't tell exactly what the heeler's done, but he should have been in there and had a throw a lot quicker than that. During this run here, the steer runs pretty hard. After the steer's roped, the head horse leaves out of there a little bit quick, but control is kept of the steer, and it's a successful run in the end. Nice face. Here we see a real, controlled, nice, smooth run. Steer handles, hops off nice. The heeler gets a big, nice, easy pitch at him. Good run. We've seen three fairly controlled team roping runs. Here is a run in the category of what not to do. Everything's going nicely during this run right now. The steer's about to get roped. There's the loop, the slack, the set. As this steer starts to turn, he takes one or two hops. Then the header gives slack back to the steer. Now watch his head go to the right, to the steer's right when he gets slack. All right? The steer is almost loose. Now what happens? The steer runs behind the head horse. That is a no-no. The heeler's already thrown his rope, had no chance of catching. That was all created by the poor handle of the header right there. Here's a real wild steer that runs real hard. And you'll see a whole lot of the same characteristics in this run. If the header would have taken a little bit more control of this steer, it could have been a successful 2-foot shot by the heeler. But you'll see the results in the wild handle. Things are all right so far. Right here is where things start getting trashy. The head horse moved up the arena instead of across at that point, giving the steer a little bit slack. And see how long and wild these strides are by the steer? He has no rhythm. Consequently, the heeler has no idea when to throw his rope. Luckily, that loop catches a foot. These are in the category of what not to do. The way I approach heeling is the same way I approach heading. I position myself about a foot to the left of the steer, a foot or two daylight back between my horse's front feet and the steer's back feet. I try to get my swing over my head, tip down over the steer's back. I use a nice, big, smooth, easy swing and a long loop. What I attempt to do is have my loop coming down over the steer's back as his back feet are coming up. What I do, I reach, place the loop on the ground with the loop almost in my hand all the way under the steer. I'll throw a loop or two and maybe you can see what I'm talking about. The main idea of the heel loop is to go there, go down, hit the ground, set in front of the feet with as much tip on the left side as there is on the right side. When your loop goes in and sets on the ground like that and the steer moves, he won't knock it over. he'll pick it up. You have 2 feet. Arm up, tip down, right in front of the feet. Slack up. When I'm practicing by myself, riding colts, I like to have a dummy like this that resembles the way a steer stands or the way he moves. I'll walk in time after time, positioning that colt, swinging my loop like I would if I were in the arena roping a steer. Make the colt come in and stop, back up, and I'll go again. When I'm roping live cattle, as I leave the box, I like to position myself about 10 feet to the right of the header, maybe farther, depending on the horse I'm riding and the type of cattle we're roping. As the steer turns and makes the first hop in the direction he's going to be going, I like to be in position right at that time. At that moment, that's the best shot that you'll probably ever get during the whole run. So I leave the box, get my rope wound up, position my horse in relation to the steer, and be ready. What a person needs to remember when he's practicing is not to throw your rope. Always let that loop roll out of your hand, deliver that rope. Get yourself a big, smooth, easy swing, pick your target spot out, let that loop roll out of your hand. Don't throw it. When practicing on the dummy, I attempt to set myself a pattern from which I try not to deviate at any time. With that loop, I should be able to rope any steer under any conditions at any time. As I start into the dummy, I get the rope up over my head, the tip at an angle over the steer's left hip. The plane of the loop should always be at a right angle with the steer's body. As I come into the steer, the plane never changes. It stays at a right angle with that steer's body all the way through the run. As my horse squares up, I reach and release. The loop should come straight down over the steer's hip, hit the ground in front of the right foot, and slide through. If I'll do this every time, that loop should react the same way every time. I try to get my speed, direction, power, and release. If while I'm practicing on the dummy here and my horse needs a little correction, it will not be more than the movement of my hand or a foot or a leg. Consequently, when I get out into the arena and I need a small correction, that's all that it will amount to, and that horse will respond accordingly. In this last run, the horse tried to come in a little bit early. Instead of pulling, all I did was lift my hand and lay a rein on her, and she moved right over. Here she needs a little help to finish her turn. All the time, all these corrections are being made. The swing has never changed. I'm in a groove with my swing in a pattern. I'll not deviate from it. Angle, tip, direction, power, release. When you're heeling, you must be ready for about anything. Here the steer is getting fished. All the time, I never change my swing. I stay right in that pattern swing. Steer leaves, I reach and rope him. Everything turns out fine. Here we have a steer that's running pretty hard. I get my position, get my swing going. Got the direction, enough speed on my rope, even though the position isn't real good, I still can catch the steer. On this paint steer here, this is a really nice handle. I'm able to do just exactly what I want to do. Hold out, be ready. As he takes the second jump away from me, I reach and rope him. Everything's fine. Here is a very nice controlled run. Tempo's good, steer handle's great, moves away, reach, dally. I've roped 4 or 5 steers in a row, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Here this steer, I don't have near enough speed on my rope. Consequently, I'm either half a jump ahead of the steer or half a jump behind him. You'll see here in this slow motion run that as I bring the loop over to rope the steer, I hit a front leg with the tip of my loop. Consequently, I'm either in front of the steer a half a jump with my swing or behind him a half a jump. Everything's good at this point. I just don't have enough speed on my rope. The loop should have been in there a half a jump sooner. On this run here, the steer runs fairly hard, goes quite a ways down the arena. I get my position, enough speed on my rope. After I get in on his hip or close to his hip and he moves away, I reach and rope him. He's moving away fast enough that I don't have to hold a lot of slack. I rope, get the slack up, and go to the horn as he's leaving. When people ask me what types of ropes they should use, I have a fairly stock answer. I use a 3/8 scant medium soft. When I started, I used a medium hard full 7/16. But my shoulders got bad, my hands got bad, so I had to go to the 3/8 scant. I like to see the person use whatever he can swing comfortably, whatever he can control, whatever works for him. With every different style of roper and every different roper, you'll see a different kind of rope. A lot of guys like a real stiff, heavy rope, while the next guy that looks like he has the same style will use a real soft, real light rope. Whatever works, that's what you should use. As far as headgear on my horses is concerned, I use basically one of 2 or 3 bits. I use a mechanical hackamore quite a bit. I use a medium port, medium shank grazing bit on my roping horses as well. I put a tie down, a leather tie down on all my horses. What the tie down does to my head horses, it steadies them a little bit. It gives them something to brace on as you set the steer. Also on my heel horses, it levels them out a little bit as they make the turn. It gives them something to steady themselves during the set. I can't tell anybody, be specific as to what you should use on your horse. You have to experiment, find out what works best for him, and also what works best for you. If you have all the control you need with a certain type of bit and the response out of your horse, you're not flustering him, that's the bit to use. However, you can overbit one very easily, so be careful of overbitting one too much. One of the most important parts of the whole run is the dally on the head and the heels. The slower and the easier you do your dally, the more proficient you'll be at it. When people get in a hurry, they start fighting the horn, they try to dally quickly. All they're doing is creating problems for themselves. To dally means to take a turn around the saddle horn. This is all there is to dallying. Reaching and feel for the saddle horn, turning the rope around it and pulling your hand back. When you're at home practicing, if you want to put a saddle on a sawhorse or a fence, remember, don't ever be in a hurry with your dallies. Slow down, and the slower you do it, the more proficient you'll be at it. We'll show you some runs here in a little bit. It shows you my dallying a live steer, and I'm going very slowly. During this run, the main thing I'm doing is making sure my horse is not ducking. I move my hand back up his neck after I rope, reach and feel for the saddle horn, taking one turn to the left and pulling my hand back. Here the horse is going to be in the same stride as the steer. Pull a slack, reach, feel, and pull my hand back to the side of the saddle horn. Dallying is nothing more than taking and turning around the saddle horn. This is all the dallying is right here. As you see, my horn here has rubber wrapped around it. What the rubber does, it makes the rope bite and hold. The rope does not run or slide. When the rope gets to running or sliding, you get coils coming through your hands. That's what cuts fingers and thumbs off. So always have your horn wrapped well with rubber and make sure it's wrapped well on the bottom. The rubber that I use on my saddle horn comes from a tire inner tube. Remember, when you're home practicing, anytime you get in a storm, if your rope goes to running too fast or your horse is ducked and you have your hand in trouble, be sure just to turn your rope loose. There'll be a lot more steers to rope later on. It's hard to replace those fingers and thumbs. What I try to do with my horse in the box, I try to seat him in the left-hand side of the box where he looks out of the barrier. I can see the steer at all times on the right side of my horse's head. As he leaves, he breaks to the steer's left hip and the left lead. Here's the horse that's going to start giving me some trouble. He's run 3 or 4 steers and he doesn't want to get back in there and sit right. He wants to crouch, wants to lean. He wants to drop that front end and shove. I'm trying to pick his front end up with my hand when I pulled on him there. I'm going to keep messing with him until he finds out it's easier for him to do what's easy and comfortable than it is to be a jerk. I'll keep moving him around until he finds his spot. Find out that it's easy to sit still. I haven't got mad, I haven't whipped or spurred. Moved him over with my feet, but I haven't got violent with him. Now he's found out that he can sit there. We're ready.
Team roping. When it all goes together right, it looks like this.